We will go ahead and get started with the first ever video edition and interview of the Tampa Bay podcast. And I am joined now by a friend of mine who is also incredibly plugged in to the University of South Florida. Robert Steeg is and correct me if any of this is wrong, Robert, I believe a founder, a contributor, and perhaps elsewise of the Bay Area Examiner, which, in my opinion, does a better job than anybody of covering USF. Did I get that mostly right?
Yeah, for the most part, it's a weird kind of historical preservation of former blogs and SB Nation sites and everything like that. But as the entity, the Bay Area Examiner exists, then yes, founder, contributor, jokingly chief, social media strategy and chief operating officer and whatever else kind of falls under the line of duty for covering a college athletics program, which is a lot at times.
Lots of hats.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of hats. Well, and as a long tenured USF fan, my dad went there. I've been following the team as long as I can really remember sports. I do remember Daily Stampede, like you said, the SB Nation, Voodoo 5, all that has now into the Bay Area Examiner always kind of been the voice for covering USF football. And it has to be kind of exciting to, since I know you and I were at USF the last, 10-ish years, there have been some ups, there have been many more downs. It has to be kind of refreshing to having some ups right now.
Yeah, it's a weird feeling. Like we kind of joke like we didn't know what to do with our hands for a little bit there. To finally feel a little bit of love towards something that we poured so much love and effort and frankly a lot of hours into. I mean, a lot of times, talking about these years of USF football that had so much promise that historically had fallen flat under game one. So it was a nice refresher these last few years, but especially this year so far to feel like there's actually some sort of positive momentum happening around USF football. It's been honestly the nicest feeling. It's euphoric. It is exactly. It's getting that filet mignon. The dog has caught the car. All of that, everything that you could ever ask for, is happening right now.
Well, and I want to come right back to that, but I have to mention, you mentioned game one, and I was just talking about a game one that I forgot was year one, McNeese State, when they came in and absolutely steamrolled USF at home to kick off the Taggart era. To me, was one of the more memorable lows, and it is so nice to now be seeing some highs, which is the first real hard-hitting, quote-unquote, USF question I will ask you right now. How good are the Bulls right now?
It's still, as we kind of can weirdly say, in week 4, since you've only done non-conference play so far, you still don't entirely know. And of course, it's going to be a backwards-facing thing, depending on how the rest of the season goes. We only know what we've been kind of able to kind of deduce from the first 4 games. Obviously, beating Boise. You don't wake up and beat Boise State, the way that you did. You don't wake up and just walk into the swamp and beat the way that they did. And you don't randomly just drop 63 points on a team the way that they did against South Carolina State. The Miami game is still kind of looming in everyone's head at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Is Miami really that good that they were able to just basically completely steamroll and shut everything down? Spoiler, yeah, probably. But that still kind of looms into the fans' heads and also the coaching staff. From wins and losses, they're going to still do what went well, what didn't go well, what can we do better next time, what can we work on, how can we hit the film room. So for all intents and purposes, if we're going to go black and white with this, they're good. They have a really good offense. They are led by a really stellar superstar quarterback in Byron Brown. The defense is absolutely tenacious, forcing turnovers. creating havoc in the backfield, et cetera, having Mac Harris just absolutely light people up all day and all night, but they're not without their flaws. And that's kind of where, the next 8 games is really going to make it or break it is, is the offense good because they're explosive, or are they good because they can score points at will? Is the defense actually capable of shutting someone down for full 4 quarters and, not let up a bunch of gimme yards, or are they going to be that bend don't break defense that might eventually break at some point? So there's just a lot of question marks around, how good their ceiling is going to be. It's unfortunate that, of course, the year that USF feels like they're really good, the rest of the conference is also pretty good, and we also have a really tough conference slate coming up. So, to me, they're good. They're above average. They're going to compete for a conference championship. That's all I could ever ask for. Whether they get that conference championship or not, depends on how much effort they put in on day in and day out.
Well, and let's stick right there. I have been watching fairly closely this conference, and 2 weeks ago, I was very concerned about a lot of the games on our schedule. Memphis, beating Arkansas, North Texas, maybe on the road is just a scary game, no matter what year it is. After last weekend, seeing Memphis stumble a little with Florida Atlantic, it's conference play. There's going to be ups and downs. Of the remaining games on USF's schedule, what games are the obvious teams, but if you had to rank, say 1, 2, 3, where does your concern lie there?
The number one, and I try not to look too far ahead past the end of my nose at this point. So to me, I'm like, let's just beat Charlotte and then worry about everything later. But honestly, and no one really talks about it, the scariest one to me is Navy for multiple layers that go into that Navy game. We have seen it ever since, our year joining the American and playing up against Navy. Navy always does the thing. They always do the thing, which is they'll walk against someone who that team is riding high, that team has everything going for it, and then they'll, just derail the entire thing. And it's at the perfect time too, because it's in that last quarter of the season, towards the end of the year, when theoretically you would be coasting if you got to that point undefeated in conference play. So that one to me is probably the scariest one. The one that's probably going to keep me up at night. If we get there for the entire weekend, I won't sleep. After that, I mean, Memphis is the scarier one to me. Two high-powered offenses. Brandon Lewis looks really good, their quarterback. Ryan Silverfield, I feel like, is one of those coaches that just on the cusp of greatness at any particular point, and has been right there every single time. So he's tired of coming up short. So they're scary. And then North Texas, to me, is a little bit of a schedule merchant at this point. I don't feel like they're a true, fully powerful 5-0 team. Their defense is a little suspect in my mind. Their offense is really potent, though, and I'll give them credit for that. But coming off a bye week, and as we've seen on social media, they're pushing everyone in Denton to go to Denton for that game. They close classes for the second half of the day, and they're rallying behind it on a nationally televised Friday night. So that one's also going to be scary just because of the environment. But I think USF can probably hold their own. Obviously, they've played in tougher environments than Denton, Texas, but conference play against an offense that really wants it, and a team that really wants it as well. So I'd probably say Navy, Memphis, and North Texas are my scary opponents right now.
On the less scary side, because it is tomorrow, we're recording this on Thursday evening. From what I can see, Charlotte came into the season as a fairly bad team that has gotten banged up, and the 28.5 point spread speaks to that. I faced the same predicament as you, talking so confidently as a USF football fan. Just you say something and then it kind of settles in that you just said what you said. No reason to worry tomorrow night, right?
No, it obviously every week you need to beat your opponent. Doesn't matter if they're God or if they're dumb to the earth at that point. You got to beat your opponent, and you got to take care of business in conference play. You can't ease up the gas just because they look down on their luck. Because the second you let belief creep in, that's where hope can become your greatest enemy. And so we talked about it in our podcast on the Bay Area Examiner, Pod by the Bay, that the best thing that USF can do is to come out, score first, get a stop, score again, and don't let up until they literally don't believe that they can get into that game anymore. And then you can start bringing in backups and everything like that and keep it going. But yeah, I mean, God bless him, because Tim Alvin, Charlotte's head coach, is going to probably be the guy that's going to turn them into a little bit of a contender. He has a ton of experience. Seems like he's got a really, really all right resource system behind them. They're not fantastic, but they've got some juice sometimes. But just the cards just didn't fall into their favor going into this season. And then it's only gotten worse as the season has gotten on. But yeah, we've seen backup quarterbacks do crazy things. USF needs to stay in their best and stay on top tippy shape and take care of business and win by more than 28.5. They need to win by 45.5 at this point.
Yeah, the points do matter at this point, especially with the aspirations that I know a lot of fans have, and certainly I think this team and this coaching staff. I think we even heard Alex Golish in press conferences kind of allude to what he believes the ceiling to be. You mentioned Byron Brown, who I want to talk about a little bit, but in my mind, what gives me more optimism about this USF team than any, really, I think, including some of the good Quentin Flowers era's teams back to the glory years, is this defense. And I don't know if we have had a better defense since 2007, 2008, when your George Selvies and Ben Moffat's were on the field. We've seen them against good teams. You mentioned the Miami game. I think that game did certainly not fall on the shoulders of the defense, but the fact that the offense and defense specifically have stayed healthy, is that something you think could really separate USF from some of these other American Conference teams that might be able to put up 50 against lesser opponents but get into a tight 24, 20, 21 kind of game, something like that?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing for USF, and this is the big thing every single year, is health. Having health, having your starters be relatively healthy has been just paramount. And it's also been your biggest enemy for USF fans in the years past, where last season, prime example, Byron Brown goes down, derails basically the entire second half of the season. You probably don't lose to Rice if that happens. You probably don't lose. I'd hesitate to say you probably don't lose to Memphis if Byron Brown doesn't get hurt. Like, it was a very demoralizing thing for the team to go through. And so for the team to be as healthy as they are right now is a really good sign. They get their banged up injuries every once in a while. Guys will be sore and everything like that. And, the other end of that is the two deep is a lot better than they had been in the past. And particularly when you look at, say, the Jeff Scott era, where, you had two capable wide receivers with Jimmy Horn and Xavier Beaver. And I don't think anyone can name the receivers after that. And, you have your starting left tackle with Donovan Jennings. And who else? Anyone? It was that whole having these powerful pieces around you that isn't just a one guy stepping up and being a star. It could be any one particular one at the end of the day. Wide receiver, running back, defensive back, linebacker, whomever. Someone can step up, and someone behind them can also step up. Alex Golish has done a fantastic job of recruiting at high school level. People always look at the transfer portal, but like Christian Neptune, our starting wide receiver, is a true freshman, and an absolute stud of a true freshman. Like it's finding those types of guys that want to come to USF and be great and build around this program, and really just buy into the culture has been paramount and key for them. So yeah, I mean, it's going to separate them from competition like tomorrow. That is where you're going to see the difference between a program that is bought in and has depth versus a program that has not yet bought in and does not have the depth right now.
Yeah, I'm like you said, it's been visible on multiple layers of, I think, offense and defense. Just having those guys to turn to is not a luxury we've had. A luxury we have had is Byron Brown, and I am a huge Byron Brown fan. I will say, I think as a player who is deservedly showered with praise, I'm probably on the relatively critical side of him compared to most. 2 years ago, we had the quarterback of our dreams and thought, my goodness, what can this young man not do? Last season, I was frustrated with his game a little bit early on. I thought, the touch on some passes over 20 yards that he had the season before was not there. And then, of course, he gets hurt. We don't get to see what could have been. I feel like this year we have seen a lot of the old Byron Brown of 2 years ago. Still, maybe some moments of concern against very good defenses like Florida and Miami. What's your assessment of him this season?
Yeah, he's been, in talking with his staff and going to a few practices, there was at a point last year that I think it all came to a head for him. And, that Alabama game is probably the prime example of, okay, we need to take a step back from this. Whether it was trying to work on his throwing motion, reading the defenses, looking to run a little bit too quickly, kind of not letting the nerves settle, and just not to say he was a bad leader, but it was he wasn't displaying the leadership traits that you would need in those situations. Like he believed in the team, but it wasn't like the rallying cry of having someone like that. But this year, specifically like in the spring, and I know we didn't see it at all during the spring game, but during the spring practices, he was a lot looser. It was a lot more, let's have fun with it. Because when you have fun with it, you're going to play better. And, we'll make mistakes along the way, maybe like bad play call, maybe bad interception, guy drops passes, whatever. Just smile and wave it off and move to the next one and work together as a team there. And one of the big things that we had talked about was that throwing motion. There was a lot of people very critical of his throwing motion last season, especially against Alabama, where you can see, he's keeping that ball high and tight. He's throwing it like an NFL quarterback, and he's skying it 20 yards past the guy. And at that point, we were all kind of concerned. We were all, crap, are we about to Sterling Gilbert this, where we try to square peg ground hole? But when we saw him throw in the spring and have that looser but more natural throwing motion to him, that's where I knew that he would be able to take off and just be able to do Byron Brown things. Like we don't need him to do, Bart Starr or Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers things. We need him to be Byron Brown. We need him to be able to throw those deep shots, hit them, connect them, run the ball where he needs to, make plays, and be a support system for the guys. And so I think that helped him out more than anything this season is just be Byron Brown. Don't be anyone else. Be Byron Brown.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I do think we've seen that, and it's nice going back to the depth to have playmakers to allow him to be himself and not have to worry about doing literally everything. You mentioned Alex Golish, who I really enjoy for a lot of different reasons. Recently, something I've been thinking a lot about is kind of the contrast right now between things USF is doing, Rob Higgins coming in, very much labeling not just USF, but Tampa Bay as a destination, as a and I forget but the stadium, the campus, the community that has arrived, that it is here, which is very much how I see it, and kind of contrasting that to, say, the Tampa Bay Rays, who just lost an owner who I don't think ever really saw Tampa Bay as a destination. I get the impression that Alex Golesh is closer to the Rob Higgins mindset than the Stu Sternberg mindset. Would you agree with that assessment?
Absolutely. I mean, we can talk about coach speak all that we want. You know, we'll probably hear a lot of it. I mean, we do hear a lot of it every year towards the end. You know, a coach may be linked to a job, and you know, he'll get up there. They'll be like, you know, hey, how do you feel about, you know, the reports about you being interested in the Florida State job, you know, the Miami, whatever that is, and they get these long-winded answers that are like, you know, I'm committed to getting us to the conference championship, you know, and you could just say no. Like they never deny it. They'll always dance around and be like, I'm committed to getting us to a conference championship. My focus is on the players in the locker room. The question is, are you going to take the Miami job or not? Like that, you could have just said no. But you know, so coach speak aside, you know, when you hear Golesh talk about his wife, Hugh and I, we're big wife guys. We understand that they are the rock of the foundation to the successful football coach most times. You know, whenever he talks about his wife, he specifically talks about that move from Tennessee to USF. He was originally not going to take that job. You know, he and his wife, very comfortable, had a good life in Knoxville. And then Michael Kelly and company, they came up there and, you know, wined and dined and schmoozed and did all the things that he needed to do. But ultimately, you know, talked with Alexis, his wife, and, you know, ultimately got her buy-in to say, you know, Alex, we can do this. We'll work on this together. Because, I mean, the dude's a psychopath. He worked he slept in his office for like the first 3 months, like constantly down in Tampa. So to me, you know, the coach speak when they're talking about direct things like being linked to a job, if a guy's going to leave a program, all that stuff is fluff and filler, and I never listen to that. I listen to what they say about how they feel about the community, how they feel about their wife being there, you know, their kids being in school, you know, at that age. You know, the other example of this is, say, Michael Kelly, who very abruptly left USF, and everyone was kind of like, whoa, what's going on? You know, you have your other reasons to leave jobs. He wanted to go to Navy because his dad was in the Navy. His daughter had graduated high school and was no longer in the nest. You know, if you're going to take the time to leave, now's the time to leave. So to me, though, it seems like Golesh talks about Tampa not as my next job. It talks about like, this is where I want to build basically this program back up to where it needs to be. He doesn't need to stay here for 30 years. No coach needs to stay in a program for 30 years. He'll get stale at that point. But he won't leave us on bad terms at the bottom of the rung at that point. You know, it's kind of the same thing that Tiger did. Tiger didn't want to leave in the bottom of the rung, got us to the promised land, and then you leave, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a good comparison. I'm glad it's not just me feeling that way from 2,000 miles away in Iowa. Last USF program question I'll throw at you before I ask you for a couple, we'll call them predictions. I think like a lot of USF fans, not be more thrilled about the Rob Higgins hire. It is something that just makes too much sense, and he seems to be saying and doing just about everything correct. But as we all know, there's a lot that goes into it. What are, in your mind, the two biggest things he's focusing on right now, and for the athletics department as a whole or the football team, and where do you see him steering those two decisions?
Yeah, I mean, the first one is the layup. It's seeing that conference, or seeing that football stadium and you know, athletics complex to its fruition, to the end. You know, dirt's moving, pillars are going up, like this thing's happening. this is a layup for him. You know, when we were talking about who the next athletic director / now CEO of athletics is going to be, I kept on saying whoever it is going to have the easiest PR tour of all time. Because God bless Michael Kelly, he did all of the hard work. He went through the ringer to make sure that this thing was going to happen, and then basically, you know, served it up on a golden platter for whomever was next. So seeing that to fruition is probably his goal number one. Like that stadium being built needs to be PR of all PR in the state of Florida. You should be having that thing talked about nonstop, 24/7 for the next 2 years. So far, he's doing that.
Yeah.
You know, finding ways to talk about new things about the stadium to build that excitement for game one and then game one and beyond. So that's the easiest. That is goal, basically number one, because that's the most attainable. Goal number two, I was shocked at this during his press conference. I didn't think he was going to address it directly, and you can probably say the same thing. I stopped the meeting. I paused the meeting that I was on. I was like, time out. I got to listen to this. He was very direct about we will find our way in a new conference. We will not, like, we are very direct with our conversations with Tim Panetti. We are very clear on the direction of the University of South Florida athletics program and their desire to join a Power Four, autonomous, whatever name you want to call those conferences. Obviously, it takes two to tango. It's a little more complicated than, like, you know, hey, I need to get to the X, Y, and Z plateau and then I'm in. But it's just continuing to do the things to set yourself up for success so that you are the sexiest girl at prom when midnight hits, basically. And they're doing that, and they've been doing that. You know, they have strong academics, which is what those presidents look for. You know, the AAU status preeminence, great medical school, and then like another top 50 ranking in the country for public schools. Is all you can ask for on the academic side of things, which, you know, he has a pretty decent hand in working alongside the school president now. But then on top of that, you know, a competent athletics staff, you know, athletics programs that don't necessarily need to be firing on all cylinders at the same time, but is strongly competitive and invested from, you know, there are going to be times where, you know, your star point guard goes down with an injury and all of a sudden you're staring at the barrel of like 12 and 28. And so that's fine. That happens. You know, not every team that's in a Power Four conference wins all their games, but you should be investing into those programs so that they don't feel like they're getting stale. And then just continuing to just drive home your messaging and your stature, being the bold out chest, so that you're not sitting there on the sideline, you know, waiting for the girl to come to you. You got to be going to that girl at the dance. So, and I mean, this dude's attracted the NHL to play an outdoor game in Tampa. I don't think he's going to back down from trying to be the next one to go, the next one to be moved up. You know, I don't think he wants to be like a package deal. I think he's looking at it like, you don't need to take me in Memphis or in Tulane. Like, the three of us don't need to go. You can just take me. Like, I'll be the sexy one.
Yeah, and ton of great points there. I thought there would not be much competition for Alex Golish's press conference moment post game after Miami when he said he told the team we'd be back in this spot, maybe this exact spot later in the year. And then I forget the specific line. Rob Higgins said something to the effect about the commissioner not being naive. Excuse me? What was that? That was but it's fantastic, and it's very much like you said. It takes two to tango, but it's very much what this fan base wants to hear. I want to ask two things of you before my final question. First, prediction for Charlotte game tomorrow night.
I took, I think the over under was like what, like 53 or something like that tomorrow, 53 and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah, I took the over, and I also think I think USF is going to be the team over. I think USF probably scores like 56, 63 at this point. I really don't see anything that is going to allow them to stop. So I would probably err on the side of like 63-7. I think that's I hate to say that's a fair assessment, but that's where my expectations are at with them.
It's one of those things we start saying this, like, wait a minute, what team are we talking about right now? And then the last question I'll ask, and maybe we'll get a chance to talk again before the end of the season, but do the Bulls play for an AAC championship this year?
My gut of guts is saying no. Purely because I look at that North Texas schedule and it pisses me off. I'll link it for you. I use K-Ford ratings for basically all of my statistical previews and everything like that. He does a fantastic job of pulling in previous game statistics to basically entice people into what these games are going to look like, and like the strength of schedule outside of the USF game for North Texas is comical. Every single one of their tough games are at home. They play Rice, Charlotte, UAB, Tulsa, and Temple on top of like USF and Memphis. And it's like what are we doing? Or USF and Navy. They have literally the easiest draw I have ever seen a school get. And so I'm sitting here, I'm like, the thing is, like, if we beat North Texas, it's not out of the woods. They can still go 7-1 and be in there as well. We have the tougher games. We have Memphis and Navy to play. It's just, I look at it and my gut is saying no. But my head, looking at it, I know what this team is capable of. I think they will be playing for a conference championship. It will probably be up against like Memphis, which is just going to be awful. I hate playing rematches, but that's where I'm at right now.
I like it. I totally see where you're coming from. Like, I think if the team plays not even their best football, but the football that they're capable of playing with defense and offense rolling, and can't overlook having one of the best kickers in the country right now. They should be able to win every game, but it's a long season. I thank you very much for doing this. I have a feeling anyone who is watching this right now is familiar with you and familiar with the Bay Area Examiner. If they are not, talk a little bit about what you guys have going on right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So my social media is basically completely dormant. So no need to follow that. But the Bay Area Examiner, we have accustomed it to basically the go-to site for fans to get real, actual, hard-hitting information out of your University of South Florida Bulls program. We've also expanded a little bit outside of our college bars, basically. So we'll cover the Bucks, the Rays. We're planning on trying to cover the Lightning, depending on how things go there. But we're a full team of people who are passionate about covering these programs for the Bay Area. The podcast that we do specifically for USF football and really USF athletics as a whole has just been a love child for me, Nathan, Colin, Seth, all the guys that have basically walked in the shoes of podcasting before us. We wanted to make it as approachable as possible so that you weren't having to read certain news articles behind paywalls every time to get information and actual opinions and actual hard-hitting news about the program. You're not going to get real opinions out of those guys. You're going to get real opinions from me, Nate, and Seth about the state of the program and the state of everything going on. So we try to make it as approachable as possible. We have a Discord as well because we know that the Twitter app can be as insufferable as ever. So we try to make it a full community of people who want to follow USF football. And the only really big change that we made when we went from the Daily Stampede to the Bay Area Examiner was we started to monetize to give back to the community. So basically, it provides us additional coverage at these away games so that we can send our photographer and our writer to those games to give us the information and cover it truly and without a shadow of a doubt the best coverage you can get for University of South Florida. So that's our MO is we're probably never going to back down from it as much as it sometimes kicks us in the balls. But it's just always been the love and passion of the game that kept us going the entire time.
Well, I certainly enjoy it. I have friends that enjoy it. So keep up the great work. I know you guys will. So you're saying Bulls get it done tomorrow. It's not close. And then it's on to North Texas Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm. The North Texas Super Bowl in Denton. God bless. We're not going there, by the way. we looked into it, as nice people do. We looked into it and we were like, yeah, that's not worth it. On a Friday night, maybe catch us on like a Saturday doing that, but not catching flight on a Thursday night to go to Denton.
Do not blame you. Well, Rob, thanks again, man. For everyone who's tuned in, thank you very much. Make sure like I said, I'm sure most people are already, if not, follow the Bay Area Examiner, follow the Tampa Bay podcast, and we'll talk to you again Monday.